We live in an era where, human beings can literally map the genome, we can split the atom, we engineer spacecraft to land on passing asteroids.
Yeah, it's wild.
Right. Like, we have completely mastered the physical world, and yet, I mean, you get one vaguely passive-aggressive email from a coworker, or you see someone cut in line at the grocery store, and your entire day is just absolutely ruined.
Completely derailed.
Exactly. Our diagnostic tools for the physical body are so incredibly precise, but when we try to look at our own, like, psychological misery, that precision just vanishes. We're suddenly dealing with this diagnostic landscape that is entirely murky.
Well, yeah, because it is the ultimate blind spot. I mean, we treat our internal frustration, our anxiety, even our societal conflicts as these mysterious, unpredictable weather events.
Right, like they just come out of nowhere.
Exactly. We think misery just sort of happens to us, like a sudden storm we just have to weather, rather than, recognizing it as the end result of a very specific mechanical sequence of events.
So, welcome to this deep dive. Today, we are opening up a translated text exploring the Mahanidana Sutta. And this is a profoundly influential ancient philosophical discourse.
Hmm.
And it details a concept called pratityasamutpada, which roughly translates to dependent origination. So our mission today is to untangle what is essentially the ultimate flowchart of human existence and suffering.
It really is a flowchart.
It is. We are going to explore exactly how an internal, barely noticeable sensation snowballs into massive real-world pain.
And, the brilliance of this document really lies in how it treats the human mind like an intricate piece of clockwork.
Oh, for sure.
It proposes that suffering isn't random at all. It is causal. Like if a certain gear turns, it inevitably catches the teeth of the next gear and the next, until the whole machine is just moving.
Okay, let's unpack this. To set the scene for you, the text opens with the Buddha residing in a Kuru town, a place called Kamasadama. So we are basically sitting in the dust and the heat of the ancient world, just eavesdropping on this conversation between the Buddha and his attendant, Ananda.
And Ananda makes a very relatable mistake here.
Oh, deeply relatable. Right out of the gate, he sits down and confidently declares that while this whole concept of dependent origination is supposedly super deep and complex, to him it seems as clear as day.
Yeah, he basically looks at the mechanics of human suffering and says, oh, I've got this figured out.
Right. Easy peasy.
Yeah.
But the Buddha shuts that overconfidence down instantly. He warns Ananda explicitly not to speak that way. He says, dependent origination is deep, and it appears deep.
Which is such a vital warning about the illusion of psychological competence. I mean, we all think we understand why we are angry or why we are sad, but the text insists we're usually only looking at the very, very surface of the water.
Totally. And I mean, who hasn't been in Nanda? We do this all the time. It's like looking at the picture on an IKEA furniture box, seeing a sleek, simple dress shelf and thinking, oh, this is easy, as clear as day.
That is the perfect analogy.
Right. You dive in without really looking closely at the manual. And 2 hours later, you are sitting on the floor, surrounded by a tangled mess of wooden pegs, some backwards shelves, and a profound sense of misery.
You fundamentally underestimated the complexity of the structure.
Exactly.
And the Buddha uses these incredibly physical metaphors to describe the result of that exact underestimation. He explains that because people do not truly grasp this underlying chain of causality, they become hopelessly trapped.
Trapped in samsara, right?
Yes, the cycle of rebirth and misery. The text says we become entangled like a tangled ball of thread, or like a densely woven bird's nest,
Wow.
or tangled munja grass, just completely knotted up.
We end up unable to cross over from this state of ruin and suffering, which basically means if you don't understand how the foundational pieces of your own reality fit together, you cannot build a way out.
Right. You just keep wandering through the same frustrating, painful loops.
So if Ananda was wrong to think the mind is simple, how does the text actually begin to untangle this massive ball of thread?
Well, by reverse engineering it. To prove how complex the mechanism is, the Buddha doesn't start at the subtle, invisible beginning.
He goes backward, right?
Exactly. He walks Ananda backward through the chain of causality, starting from the ultimate, inescapable, and highly visible endpoint of human misery, which is aging and death. He asks if there is a cause for aging and death.
And the answer is birth, which, I mean, on a purely biological level, sounds completely obvious. If you aren't born, you can't get old and you can't die.
Yeah. But the text emphasizes the absolute totality of this rule across every conceivable state of existence. It points out that if there were absolutely no birth in any realm, and it lists them out exhaustively to make sure nothing is excluded.
Right. It mentions being born as devas, gandharvas, yakshas, ghosts, humans, animals, birds, or reptiles. Wait, devas, gandharvas, yakshas, for anyone unfamiliar with ancient cosmology, those are celestial beings, cosmic musicians, and nature spirits, right?
Correct, yeah. The text is basically incorporating the entire cosmological worldview of its time to say that whether you are a mythical sky spirit, a wealthy human, or, a lizard on a rock, the mechanism applies.
Wow.
If manifestation into existence birth didn't happen in any of these forms, aging and death simply wouldn't exist. The root cause of the end is the beginning.
Okay, so stepping back one link further, the text asks what causes birth, and the answer given is becoming.
Right. And this becoming is broken down into three distinct categories in the source. You have sensual becoming, form becoming, and formless becoming.
So how should we think about that?
You can think of it as the momentum of existence taking shape. It's the active pulling process that leads directly to being born into one of those realms we just talked about.
Okay, but momentum doesn't generate itself. Something has to push it. And the text identifies the cause of becoming as clinging.
Yes.
This is where the descent through these links shifts from grand cosmic concepts into something fiercely psychological. I feel like we're really entering the territory of the human mind here.
We definitely are. The source outlines 4 highly specific types of clinging.
Okay.
First, clinging to sensual pleasures. Second, clinging to views, which encompasses our opinions and beliefs. Third, clinging to rules and observances. And fourth, clinging to the doctrine of the self, which is this deeply held notion of I and mine.
That second one, clinging to views, is incredibly relevant for you listening today. Like, think about social media tribalism or a furious political debate at a dinner party.
Oh, absolutely.
That is the raw, visceral experience of clinging to a view. It's not just having an opinion, it's locking your entire identity onto it. But wait, nobody just wakes up and decides to fiercely defend a view or a set of rules out of nowhere.
No, they don't.
It feels like there must be a trigger. There has to be a psychological spark before the flame. What actually triggers the clinging in the first place?
Well, the text points to craving as the root cause.
Craving.
Yeah, you cannot cling to something unless you first crave it.
Okay.
The source details craving for form, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental objects. It's the raw, burning thirst to experience something. Or, conversely, the thirst to push an experience away.
Which naturally forces us to ask, what causes the craving? And the answer the text gives is simply, feeling.
Right. Specifically, feelings born of contact with the 6 senses defined in the ancient framework. So that's the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and the mind.
The mind is a sense.
Yeah, the mind is treated as a sense organ that detects thoughts and ideas, just as the eye detects light.
I want to pause here and really look at the mechanics of this, because the transition from feeling to craving is like, it's the invisible gear turning in all of our heads 1,000 times a day.
Oh, constantly.
It is basically an algorithm. An input arrives, say, your ear makes contact with a specific tone of voice from your boss. That is sensory contact. Immediately, before you even consciously process it, your brain auto-tags that raw data with a feeling. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral.
And that auto-tagging process is instantaneous.
Yeah.
If the tone is tagged unpleasant, the algorithm immediately outputs craving. So in this case, craving to escape the situation, craving for validation, or craving to argue back.
Right.
And then that craving hardens into clinging. So clinging to the view that your boss is unfair, and suddenly the whole machine is roaring. You're trapped in a cycle of stress and misery, all cascading from a split-second sensation in the ear.
See, here's where it gets really interesting. Having established this lightning-fast internal mental loop from feeling to craving the text suddenly pivots.
It does.
It doesn't just keep digging deeper into the subconscious. It branches off entirely to show how this invisible internal algorithm explodes into external real-world chaos.
Yeah, this is arguably one of the most striking sociological observations in the source material. It traces a highly specific chain of causality, starting from that internal craving, but following it out into the physical world.
The chain of avarice.
Exactly. It maps out the chain of avarice.
Let's trace it. So it starts with craving, which leads to seeking. You want something, a promotion, a material object, a relationship, so you actively go looking for it.
Makes sense.
Seeking leads to gain. You actually acquire the thing. But instead of peace, gain leads to decision-making.
And that specific link, gain, leading to decision-making is fascinating. Because why does getting what we want cause us to calculate?
Because acquisition introduces vulnerability.
Yes. The psychological process shifts from the thrill of the hunt to the anxiety of logistics. Where do I store this money? How do I insure this car? Who might try to take this from me?
Exactly. That anxious calculation, the decision-making, leads directly to desire and passion for the acquired object, which solidifies into attachment. You literally merge your identity with the thing you gained.
Yeah.
Attachment then morphs into possessiveness, the concept of this is mine. Possessiveness breeds avarice, the greed to keep it tightly guarded and accumulate more. And finally, avarice leads to defending possessions.
And defending possessions is the critical inflection point, where the psychological completely bleeds into the physical. The text explicitly states that defending possessions is the direct, unadulterated cause for taking up sticks and swords.
The physical toll detailed here is shocking, but undeniably accurate. The text says defending leads to quarrels, conflict, insults, lies, and various, as it calls them, evil states.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture, the text is brilliantly linking the absolute micro to the extreme macro. It is drawing a straight, unbroken line from a fleeting internal sensory contact all the way to warfare.
It's nuts to think about it that way.
Every physical fight, every societal conflict, every lie told in a boardroom to protect a bonus is just the distal end of an internal feeling that mutated into a craving.
And the text states the underlying logic clearly. If the act of defending didn't exist entirely, if it were completely uprooted, none of the taking up of sticks and swords, none of the quarrels or lies would arise.
Because the violence isn't the root problem.
No. The violence is the inevitable symptom of the possessiveness, which is a symptom of the craving. To stop the swords, you have to trace the causality all the way back to the eye touching a form, or the ear touching a sound.
Which brings us to an unavoidable precipice. If this whole massive structure of suffering, from a bad mood to a battlefield, rests on the slender pillar of feeling, we have to go back to the main chain and ask what lies beneath it.
Right, we have to go to the very bottom of the psychological well.
Exactly. So we left off at feeling. Feeling comes from contact, the sensory organs meeting the world. What causes contact? The text explains that contact is caused by name and form.
Name and form.
Yeah. Name and form essentially refers to the mental and physical bodies, the mind-body complex. The physical shape we occupy and the mental faculties that identify, name, and categorize the world around us. Without name and form, there is no apparatus to make contact with anything. You cannot have an eye make contact with light if there's no physical eye to begin with.
Okay, so name and form is the hardware. But what powers the hardware? What causes name and form? The text points to the final link in this downward chain, which is consciousness. Consciousness causes the mind-body complex to animate.
But if you are rigorously reverse engineering reality, as the Buddha is doing for Ananda, you cannot stop there.
There's more.
You have to ask the next logical question. What causes consciousness? And this is where the text introduces a profoundly mind-bending philosophical concept.
Yeah, the Buddha asks if there is a cause for consciousness, and the answer is yes. The cause of consciousness is name and form. It loops entirely back on itself.
What's fascinating here is the ultimate revelation of the text. It shatters the idea of a single, solid foundation stone at the bottom of our existence. Instead, consciousness and name form are mutually dependent.
They rely on each other.
They rely entirely on each other to exist. It is not a straight tower. It is two stones leaning against each other. If you remove one, the other instantly falls.
And to make this highly abstract idea concrete, the text brings in a very vivid biological metaphor regarding the womb. It asks a series of hypothetical questions to prove this mutual dependency.
It asks, imagine if consciousness did not descend into the mother's womb. If that animating spark were absent, would name and form the physical and mental faculties of a being develop in that womb?
And the answer is no.
Right. Furthermore, if consciousness descended but then departed, would the being be born into the state of existence? Again, no.
And it extends to human growth, too. If consciousness were somehow cut off in a young boy or girl, would their physical and mental form continue to experience growth, increase, and development? The text says absolutely not.
Right, because consciousness is the necessary ingredient to animate and sustain the physical and mental hardware.
Okay.
Conversely, and this is the other side of the leaning stones, if consciousness did not have a resting place in name and form, if it didn't have that physical and mental apparatus to anchor to, it could not manifest.
Makes sense.
And without that mutual anchoring, would the whole cascade of suffering, from birth to aging to death, arise?
The answer is no. If consciousness has no physical or mental ground to stand on, it cannot experience the sensory contact, the feeling, or the craving. The text basically states with finality, this is the extent of it. This is the extent to which the wheel of samsara spins.
Meh.
It is a closed, self-sustaining loop between consciousness and name form that generates the entire universe of human experience.
It is the engine room of existence.
Yeah.
Consciousness needs the body and mind to experience anything, and the body and mind need consciousness to be alive.
Mm-hmm.
Once those two lock together, the generator hums to life. Contact happens. Feeling flares up. Craving is triggered. Clinging takes hold. We become. We are born. We age. We take up sticks and swords to protect what we think is ours. We die. Yeah. And the loop just keeps spinning, ready to generate the whole painful sequence again.
Think back to Ananda's original confident statement at the beginning of our deep dive. He looked at all of this and said it was as clear as day.
Wow, he was so wrong.
It is an unbelievably intricate, hidden mechanism. If you just look at the surface of your life, the arguments, the stress, the aging, you are completely missing the invisible gears grinding away underneath. It's like you are trying to fix a broken engine by yelling at the dashboard.
And then that superficial understanding breeds a highly dangerous, false sense of control.
Yeah.
We genuinely believe we can just decide not to be angry today, or decide not to cling to our political views.
Right, like willpower is enough.
Exactly. But if you haven't observed the microscopic algorithmic transition from a simple feeling to a desperate craving, your conscious decisions will always be outmatched by the raw momentum of the chain.
So let's synthesize the journey we've just taken through this ancient flowchart. We started with the universal misery of aging and death. We walked back and saw how birth into any state is driven by the momentum of becoming.
Mm-hmm.
We saw that becoming is fueled by clinging to our sensual desires, our rigid opinions, our rules, and our massive egos.
And then we dug underneath that, clinging to find the raw, unedited craving for sensory experience. We traced how a simple, neutral feeling generated by sensory contact is instantly categorized and turned into that craving.
We followed that terrifying side branch showing how internal craving explodes outward, how it drives us to seek, to acquire, to anxiously calculate how to protect our gains.
Leading to avarice.
Leading to avarice, possessiveness, and eventually the literal and metaphorical swords we draw against each other.
And finally, we hit the bedrock, finding not a flat surface, but a continuous loop. The twin engines of consciousness and physical mental form constantly feeding each other, keeping the factory of existence running.
So what does this all mean for you? Why does mapping out this ancient translation matter when you have, a modern life to live, meetings to attend, and bills to pay?
It's a fair question.
It matters because by understanding this incredibly precise sequence, you aren't just absorbing ancient philosophy. You are being handed an operational manual for your own mind.
It fundamentally changes the relationship you have with your own suffering. It moves misery from an abstract curse you have to endure to an observable mechanical process you can actually monitor.
If you can memorize this flowchart, you can start to watch it happen in real time inside your head.
Yeah.
You can notice the exact moment, a pleasant feeling from a compliment or an unpleasant feeling from a criticism suddenly hardens into a craving.
Yes.
You can feel the precise second you start clinging to a specific outcome in a project or clinging to a grievance just because it feels familiar. And maybe if you can spot that exact link in the chain while it's happening, you might be able to intercept it. You might be able to untangle your own ball of thread before it traps you.
Because to observe the mechanism without being blindly driven by it is the ultimate goal here. And based on the text's profound insights into how internal feeling creates external conflict, there's a very practical place to start applying this today.
Where should we be looking?
Look closely at your own life right now, particularly through the lens of that chain of avarice. What psychological or physical possessions, what social status, what specific political views, what material comforts are you fiercely calculating how to defend today?
That's a huge question.
It is. And what kind of exhaustion, what kind of interpersonal conflict would instantly vanish from your daily life if you recognize the simple underlying craving beneath it all and just chose to lay down your stick and sword?